Do you think America or Europe will be the better place to live in 2026? It might not be America. Because with $20,000 in many parts of Europe, you can pay for housing, transportation, healthcare, and still have money left over to relax or save. But in America, $20,000 might only be enough to get you through about 20 days, even if you are trying to spend as carefully as possible. Then taxes, tips, parking fees, and all kinds of other charges start showing up one after another, fighting over whatever money you have left. So is the real problem that Americans just do not make enough money, or has a good salary in America stopped buying the kind of life it once promised? In this video, we are going to look at why millions of Americans are walking away from their wages and income. What is pushing America into a crisis? Watch until the end of the video, because I will show you why more and more people today are leaving America to live in Europe. Before we go any further, we probably need to make one thing clear. What exactly counts as a normal life? Because if we keep talking about home prices going up, rent going up, insurance going up, or groceries getting more expensive, this video can easily turn into just another list of things that cost more. And really, nobody needs another list to know that life in America is getting more expensive. The important part is somewhere else. A normal life does not mean having a big house, a luxury car, or taking several vacations every year. For someone who works, it simply means having a full-time job, getting a steady paycheck, being able to pay for housing, food, utilities, insurance, gas, and still having a little money left at the end of the month. It does not have to be much, but at the very least, it should be enough so that a broken car or an unexpected bill does not immediately turn into a crisis. The problem is that this breathing room is getting smaller and smaller. American wages are still going up on paper, but by July 2026, average hourly wage growth in the private sector was only about 3.2% compared with a year earlier. Meanwhile, after accounting for prices, the real purchasing power of hourly wages was actually lower than it had been a year earlier. That is why someone can get a raise walk out of the grocery store and still wonder why they're able to buy less.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but I felt compelled to say it. Things out here are getting expensive. I see that. Grapes, $7. Eggs, $5. Homes, $500,000. Cars, 40 grand. Used. It could be a Mazda. They don't care. Right? But one thing I do want to say is I don't give a damn how expensive it gets. I'm not working a second job. Y'all not about to have me out here working twice. Okay, I'm good until about 5:30. 5:31, legs start buckling. Knees going. 6 o'clock, vision blurry. Can't find my car. Okay, I can't work two jobs. So whoever needs to fix it, please fix it, because it's to the point now where working 40 hours a week ain't enough. But I'm gonna make it enough.
An American mother named Shay got a lot of attention when she openly said she refused to accept the idea that she should have to get another job just to survive. What made the video stand out was not that she did not want to work. Actually, she was talking about something very basic. Working a full 40 hours a week is supposed to mean something. If someone is already giving most of their week to a job and still has to find another evening shift just to keep the bills from getting out of control, then the problem is no longer simply work harder. And Shay is not the only reason we should pay attention to this. The latest data shows that in July 2026, about 8.7 million Americans were working more than one job. Having two jobs is nothing new in America, and we should not pretend it never happened before. But what matters is what that second job is being used for. If you work extra to save for a trip, start a business, or reach a bigger goal, that is a choice to move forward faster. But if you are selling your evenings and weekends just to pay rent, groceries, loans, or build up a few $100s in case something goes wrong, that means something completely different. At that point, the second job is not helping you move forward. It is helping you keep from falling behind. And that may be the saddest sign of all. Americans are not becoming more productive just because they have to work more hours. When one full-time job is no longer enough to create a normal life, the question has to be, what is taking the paycheck before workers can keep anything for themselves? The first answer is the biggest expense for most families: housing. For decades, a home was not just a place to sleep, it was also an asset. You rented, you saved, you bought a home, then slowly paid down the mortgage and built equity. At some point, that same home helped make your family more financially stable. Put simply, you moved from paying rent to building something that actually belonged to you. That used to be one of the most familiar paths to the American dream. But that ladder has a pretty interesting problem. Now, a lot of people cannot even get on to the first step. Harvard's housing report shows that 22.7 million renter households in America are spending more than 30% of their income on rent and utilities. Of those, 12.1 million are spending more than half their income just to keep a roof over their heads. After rent takes half your paycheck. The advice to save up to buy a home sounds a lot like telling someone swimming in the middle of the ocean that they should save some water.
I don't think there's anything wrong with adults living with their parents. Matter of fact, I feel the exact same way I felt when I said this.
Household, it is a
Kaylin, 23 from Texas, says flat out that jobs today do not even pay enough for her to rent a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment before even counting insurance, groceries, utilities, gas, and other bills. She still lives with her parents and says that if she moved out on her own, she would probably have to work multiple jobs just to get by. And the important thing is, she is not describing a penthouse in Manhattan. We are talking about a 1-bedroom apartment. Apparently, living on your own is slowly turning into a premium product too. Then comes the next step, buying a home. The median sale price of a new home in America in the second quarter of 2026 was about $410,700. Meanwhile, 30-year mortgage rates have recently been around 6.6%. That means buyers do not just have to come up with tens of thousands of dollars for a down payment. They also have to prove they can carry a large monthly payment for years, while insurance, property taxes, and repair costs are standing outside the door waiting for their turn.
I wanted to unintroduce myself.
Okay, nice to meet you.
I'm not sure if the previous owner had told you, we're actually going to be the ones that just purchased the house.
Okay.
I know you haven't rented, so I wanted to see if you were interested in stay rented there.
Yeah, I do.
I know the house needs some repairs. We plan on fixing up the house. I just wanted to get in touch with you and set times to start repairing the house and talk a little bit about the rent today.
Okay.
You're currently rented for $1,100 in that house, and it's in Miami. It's a pretty low price in today's market. I wanted to see if you wanted to stay there.
Yeah, I was planning on staying. I don't want to move, and I have been here for over 10 years.
I would want you to stay, but we'd have to raise it a little bit.
Okay, and?
There's houses in that area going for $2,500. You could take the lower end of $2,200.
Are you kidding me? That has to be a joke. $2,500. That's over double my current rent. I can't afford that. I have kids, and I'm already working 2 jobs as it is. Where do you want me to go now?
In a controversial TikTok, a renter in Miami was told that her rent could go from $1,100 to at least $2,200 a month. Her reaction was simple. She has 2 kids and already works 2 jobs, so where is she supposed to go if her rent doubles? This is almost the entire housing crisis compressed into one phone call. Working 2 jobs still might not be enough to keep the home you are already renting, while buying a home of your own feels like a story from another planet. And that is the trap. High rent makes it harder to save. Not having enough savings keeps you from buying a home. Not being able to buy a home means you keep paying rent while home prices and borrowing costs can keep changing before you ever catch up. You're not standing still because you're not trying. You're standing still because the finish line keeps moving farther away. That is also why adults continuing to live with their parents should not automatically be turned into a story about a generation that refuses to grow up. Sometimes that old bedroom at your parents' house is simply the most financially reasonable option left. So even the meaning of a normal home is changing. It used to be the place where a family started building wealth. Now, for more and more people, simply being able to live independently is already an achievement. And when owning a normal home starts to feel like a luxury, maybe the problem is not that Americans suddenly started dreaming too big. Maybe that very ordinary dream simply became too expensive. On television, the American economy is often described with some very nice phrases. Steady growth, a strong labor market, companies continuing to make profits, and of course, an economy full of resilience. It sounds like America just finished running a marathon and still has enough energy to turn around and smile for the camera. But for a worker who gets paid on Friday and sees their account almost empty by Monday, that so-called resilience is probably living in a different zip code. There is one question we almost never hear on economic news after every bill is paid. How much money does an American family actually have left? That is where the real story begins. Because Americans do not walk into the grocery store with the salary listed on their employment contract. They walk into the grocery store with whatever is left after rent, the car payment, insurance, utilities, internet, and dozens of other required expenses have already passed through their bank account. Imagine your paycheck is like a pizza that has just been set on the table. Before you even get to take the first slice, taxes take a piece, rent takes a few more slices, insurance takes another one, then come the car loan, electricity, water, and phone bill. By the time the pizza comes back around to you, a lot of people only have one small slice left to feed their entire family for the next 2 weeks. That is why so many people say they got a raise but do not feel any richer at all. The interesting thing is that on paper, the income of many Americans has gone up in recent years, but that does not mean they have more money to spend. Listen to the story of Sarah, an office worker in North Carolina, who recently got a raise of about 4%. She was excited because she thought she could finally start saving. But just a few months later, her apartment rent went up, her car insurance premium was adjusted higher, her electric bill increased with energy prices, and childcare costs went up too. That raise was like pouring another cup of water into a bucket that already had 5 holes in it. Yes, there is more water going in, but the bucket never fills up. That is exactly what a lot of American families are going through. Income goes up, but the money left over goes down. And that is what makes people feel trapped. There are expenses you absolutely can cut. You can put off buying a new TV, you can skip a vacation, You can even cancel a few streaming services you barely use, but you cannot tell your landlord, I want to save money this month, so I'm not paying rent yet. You also cannot tell your car, please do not break down before payday, or tell your kids we are going to stop eating this month. The financial crisis facing many families today is not coming from luxury items. It is coming from the very things they have to buy just to keep going to work and maintain a normal life. Maybe that is why so many people no longer feel like they are living, but more like they are running on a financial treadmill. Running very fast, getting completely exhausted, but still staying in the exact same place. Researchers in America have a pretty interesting term called ALICE. These are people who have jobs and earn above the poverty line, but still cannot afford the basic necessities of life. They are not poor enough to qualify for many assistance programs, but they are not financially comfortable enough to handle a financial shock when it happens. In other words, they are living in a very wide gray area of the American economy. From the outside, they still go to work every morning, still drive to the office, still take their kids to school. But just one car repair bill, one short hospital stay, or one washing machine suddenly breaking down can make the entire month's financial plan collapse like a row of dominoes. According to some recent surveys, about 1/3 of Americans have almost no savings available to handle even an emergency expense of just a few $100s. That means the distance between stability and crisis can sometimes be just one car breaking down on the way to work. And from there, the cycle begins.
Let me be very real with you. Credit cards are the worst type of debt you can have. It is designed to keep you poor. It's designed to keep you in a trap by just going round and round like a hamster on a hamster wheel. But if you can avoid them, please do. If you're already in them, don't panic. This is a way that you can clear off your credit card debt without too much stress, but it requires you to be disciplined and to decide that you're going to do it. Okay, let's go. Here's the best way, in my opinion, and from research, that you can pay off your credit card. It is called the avalanche method. This method requires you to pay off the highest interest rate first. Then you pay minimum payments on the rest of them. So, for example, you have 3 credit cards. One has an interest rate of 25%, one has an interest rate of 16%, and one has an interest rate of 10%. You're going to be focusing on the 25% one, the higher interest rate. And for the 16 and 10%, you keep paying the minimum payment. So any extra money you have, not minimum payment on 25, any extra money you have,
If you have been scrolling through social media lately, you have probably noticed Americans sharing how much they use credit cards to the point where they can no longer afford to pay them off. The car breaks down, so they put it on a credit card. The next month, the minimum payment goes up, so they have to cut their grocery budget. They run short on cash, so they keep using the card to pay for basic necessities. This is not the kind of bankruptcy that happens overnight like in the movies. It is more like waves slowly eating away at a shoreline every day. Each wave is small, but after months, the entire beach can disappear. That is why a lot of workers say the most exhausting part is not one huge financial shock, but the feeling that every month they lose a little more hope. If this story sounds familiar to you, let us know in the comments. What do you think is eating up the most income for families right now? Rent, insurance, healthcare, or food? Because right here, we are about to get to an even more surprising contradiction. People keep saying inflation has gone down. But if that is true, why do so many Americans still feel like everything keeps getting more expensive every time they walk into a grocery store or open their bills at the end of the month? There is one truth about inflation that a lot of people misunderstand, and it may be one of the most important pieces of this entire story. If you have been following economic news lately, you have probably heard this line many times: inflation is cooling down. When you hear that, it is easy to think life is about to get cheaper, but then the next morning you walk into the grocery store, look at your electric bill, or open an email reminding you to pay your insurance, and your first reaction is, wait, what exactly got cheaper? This is actually one of the most common misunderstandings in economics. Lower inflation does not mean prices are going down. It only means prices are rising more slowly than before. Imagine something used to cost $100. In the first year, it goes up to $120. The next year, it only goes up to $123. Economists will say good news inflation has dropped significantly, but the person standing at the checkout counter sees something very simple. The item that used to cost $100 still costs $123. Experts see the rate of price increases slowing down. Consumers see a new price they are forced to accept. That is the difference between technical data and real life. That is also why so many American families feel like they are living on a price plateau. The climb may not be as steep anymore, but everything is still stuck up high. Food prices are still higher than before. Rent is still expensive. Car insurance and health insurance are still putting pressure on families. Car repairs, electric bills, eating out, or even getting a haircut are all very unlikely to go back to what they cost a few years ago. According to many statistics, a typical basket of groceries is still significantly more expensive than it was in 2020, even though the inflation rate has fallen a lot. That is worth thinking about because income can take years to catch up. while prices only need a few years to climb to a whole new level. And once prices get high, they rarely volunteer to go back down. But there is something else that makes a lot of people feel like their wallets are being drained every day, even when they do not always know what to call it. It is shrinkflation, smaller packaging, while the price stays almost the same or even goes higher. A bag of chips gets a few dozen grams lighter, a cereal box gets a little smaller, a container of ice cream has less in it than last year. Then there are all kinds of fees showing up everywhere: delivery fees, processing fees, service fees, convenience fees, and even checkout screens that always seem to suggest a tip. Sometimes consumers walk out of a store feeling like they did not just buy a product, but somehow signed up for an entire package of extra fees along with it. Those small charges, when added up over an entire month, create the feeling that money is disappearing much faster than wages are rising. It is the kind of pressure that is not loud but keeps wearing you down like water dripping on stone. And here is a pretty interesting contradiction. There are states like Texas and Mississippi where food prices are among the lower ones compared with the national average. At first glance, it seems like people there should have an easier time, but in reality, many families still struggle every day just to put enough food on the table. Why? Because lower prices do not automatically mean greater affordability. If income is also lower, while rent, energy, and transportation still take up most of your salary, then a gallon of milk being a few cents cheaper does not change much. Imagine two people walking into the same grocery store. One person can buy a package of 24 rolls of toilet paper because each roll costs less that way. The other person knows that perfectly well, but only has enough money in their wallet to buy the package of 4 rolls. Ironically, when you calculate the cost per roll, the second person ends up paying more. Economists sometimes call this the poverty tax, not because anyone is actually charging an extra tax, but because not having enough cash keeps people from choosing the most cost-effective option. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew the bigger package was cheaper but still had to buy the smaller one because your budget that week would not allow anything else? If so, share your experience in the comments. A lot of people will realize they are definitely not alone. But you know what? The high cost of living is only half the story. The other half is how millions of American families are still trying to keep their lives going across a bridge called credit. That bridge makes everything look like it is still okay in the short term, but it can also turn a bill today into a burden that lasts for years. There is something pretty interesting that happens when Americans and Europeans start comparing salaries. Looking at the numbers on paper, Americans usually have good reason to feel like they are winning. A lot of jobs in America pay significantly more than the same jobs in Europe. But life has an annoying habit. It does not care how good your salary looks on LinkedIn. It only cares how much money and peace of mind you have left after paying for everything you have to pay for. That is why I think the question who makes more is sometimes not the best question. A more practical question is, how many things does each person have to buy with their paycheck just to feel protected in everyday life?
Germany, US, birth rates are still declining. What can we do? Maybe we make it free to give birth? Okay, yeah. No. We could give monthly parental support checks. Oh yeah, sure. We could make daycare affordable. Okay. Offer parental leave? Yeah, sure, okay. Well... We could offer poor sex education. There you go. No. We could outlaw abortion and forced birth. What the fuck?
Ali is a mother from Texas who moved to Germany. In her video, she compares what it is like raising children in the two countries and talks about the things that make life in Germany less stressful for her family: healthcare support for parents, more manageable childcare, and parental leave. In an interview with BuzzFeed, Ali said that when she was pregnant in America, one of her biggest worries was medical costs. But living in Germany, she did not have to constantly worry about falling behind financially in the same way. This is exactly the part that often disappears when we simply put two salaries next to each other. Healthcare is the clearest example. The OECD estimates that America spends nearly $14,885 per person each year on healthcare, the highest in the OECD and far above the group's average. Germany is not a country with cheap healthcare either, but spending of about $9,365 per person is still significantly lower than in America. Europeans obviously do not get medical care through magic. They pay for it through taxes and social contributions. But for many families, the risk is shared ahead of time instead of waiting until the day a hospital sends a bill and then finding out you bought the wrong kind of security. Time off works the same way. Workers in the EU are guaranteed at least 4 weeks of paid vacation every year under working time rules. In America, federal law does not require companies to pay workers for vacation time or sick days. An American may make more money, but if taking time off means losing income or depending entirely on the employer's policy, then that salary difference is not as simple as it looks on a paycheck. That does not mean Europe is paradise. Salaries are lower in many places, taxes are higher, housing is also very expensive in many cities, and public systems have problems of their own. But the important difference is how risk is divided. In America, a bigger paycheck often comes with a pretty long list of things you have to protect yourself against: healthcare, childcare, retirement, emergency savings, and sometimes even time off. So maybe the final question should not be whether Americans or Europeans make more money. The more important question is, after paying the price of a normal life, who has more money, time, and security left? After all the numbers about wages, rent, cars, debt, healthcare, and the cost of living, maybe the most important question is still very simple. Can someone who works hard in America today still build a normal life? Because the problem is not that America is no longer rich. America is still a massive economy. It still has jobs that pay very high salaries, and it still has a lot of opportunities. But for more and more people, a paycheck no longer creates the feeling that they are moving forward. It only helps them stay where they are, pay all the bills, and then start over again the next month. And when a full-time job can no longer buy enough stability, time, and freedom to choose, then the problem is not just the salary anymore, it is the price of a normal life itself. If you want to keep seeing America through what people are actually experiencing, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.